April is Autism Acceptance Month. In the past 20 years, the number of autism cases in U.S. children has more than tripled, and new CDC numbers show that they're still going up. In 2020, about 1 in 36 8-year-olds were diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. That's up from 1 in 44 in 2018. Also, for the first time in 2020, higher percentages of Asian and Pacific Islander, Hispanic, and Black children were diagnosed than white children. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disorder that can affect a child's social skills, communication, and behavior. Clinical psychologist Cynthia Martin from the Child Mind Institute joins us right now. Good morning, Cynthia. How are you doing?
Morning. Doing well.
So, a 22% rise in autism cases in 2 years may seem concerning to most, but you say it's a good thing.
Yeah, well, one thing that I think we want to also be aware of is that we are coming out of a global pandemic where there were a lot of numbers that were going out. So any numbers that are going to affect children are going to have parents on high alert.
Okay.
So, but these numbers, detecting autism, identifying autism within our broader community is something that has been underway for years and for decades. And what these numbers are in part reflective of is better detection of autism, and not just detection, but actually taking those children who are detected of having autism and getting them linked with a medical provider or getting them identified within a school system as actually having autism spectrum disorder. So this rise in diagnosed cases of autism is a positive thing, because we also know that we are better identifying children who are coming from underserved communities or children of minority racial groups who were not previously identified in prior samples that led to the CDC data.
So, okay. Go ahead, Gayle.
Go ahead.
So I think we're going to ask the same question.
I want to know, what are some of the signs, if you're a parent and you're watching your child, especially because I keep hearing they're fine till 2 or 3 years old, and then all of a sudden they start to regress. A, is that true? And B, what are some of those signs that parents should be looking out for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we typically don't see that kids are developing 100% typically, and then at 2 they have a severe regression. So that's a bit more of a misconception, what a lot of parents think about when they think about autism. But we are much, much better at identifying autism in really young kids. So as young as about 12 months, we can start seeing some children having some deviations in what we call their joint attention skills. So what that looks like is you see that the child isn't really paying attention to the same things you're paying attention to, or it's really difficult to get their attention.
So it doesn't point to people, play with others, respond to their name, make eye contact.
Right. So it might be difficult to get their attention by calling their name. They also might not be communicating with you a lot. So toddlers are primed to communicate. You should know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they want without them needing to verbally tell you, because they're going to tell you through their facial expression or through pointing or gesturing or showing you things or giving you things. And that's not something that we typically need to teach young kids. So if young children under the age of 2 are not doing that, then you do want to bring those concerns to your pediatrician and potentially consider an evaluation.
Where are we on the question of what's causing autism?
That's a good question, and I only get that question about 5 times every day. And we
well, then
really...
you're welcome.
Yeah, we got the first one. We started early.
I hope this is the first.
Yeah, this is the first one for today. And the reality is we just don't know yet. We don't know what causes autism.
That's so scary that after all this time, and as prevalent as it seems to be, that we still don't know. I was curious about why it's higher among people of color and in boys.
So for people of color, I don't necessarily think it's higher.
You don't?
Then I think what we see in the CDC data right now is a reflection of better identification in a previously underserved group.
Okay.
Because in the prior samples that led to that CDC data, we actually saw that children of color were under-identified. Now, as a professional, we know that symptoms of autism and autism diagnoses affect racial groups equally.
Yeah.
And so there was a call to action to say we need to better identify autism in racial groups that are not being identified, because detection and diagnosis leads to intervention services.
The more studies within those communities will reflect more diagnoses. So what advice do you have for families that might have just found out that their child has autism and are concerned
Because back in the day,
don't know what to feel.
Back in the day, if you got the diagnosis, it was devastating to hear as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's usually the first time parents are hearing and experiencing autism. So it's an incredibly scary place to be as a parent. So the first thing I do with parents is I always validate how they're feeling. And I let them know that it's a normal reaction to feel overwhelmed, to have feelings of grief, potentially feelings of blame. All of these feelings are very normal. They're in a world now of uncertainty. But I let parents know that early identification and early intervention has come significant, it's just transformed in terms of where it used to be decades ago. So we know that individuals with autism lead beautiful and fulfilling lives. We know that there are going to be some things that they are not going to learn as naturally as their typically developing peers, but that's why we're identifying that they have autism and formulating a treatment plan that's going to help them learn those skills and help their parents understand how to really parent them in a way that's individualized to their own strengths.
And those kids could be extremely gifted in other areas. Cynthia Martin, thank you so much. We appreciate you.